Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast here on all things LSU Tigers. We got a special guest with us today as we go back behind enemy lines. Cody Goodwin. My name is Bryce Koon. Cody, you're over there, with the Bama 24/7 site. First off, how's it been? First year here on the beat. How are you enjoying it?
It's been fun, man. It's for those who, not that your listeners care, but I came from Big 10, Big 12 country. So watching a lot better football for one, which has been an absolute treat this fall for me. But no, man, it's been fun. It's we were talking before you hit record here. The bye week came at a good time, I think, for both of these teams, just to kind of tee up this matchup. But also, I think for the rest of us, because those first couple of months, man, that'll get you. That grind's real.
Oh, it's I know you said that Saban said it's a good time for the players. Kelly said the same thing yesterday. And I know you said all the media looked at each other over there in Tuscaloosa yesterday. It was like it was really good for us too. So, but we begin the home stretch of the season, and as in years prior, over here in the SEC, the LSU Alabama game kind of signifies, hey, we're in the final month of the regular season. So as we get ready to turn the calendar, recording this on Halloween, I'll ask you this: do you have any big Halloween plans? What are you going dressed as?
I mean, by the time this probably lands, we'll already, we have Alabama has player availabilities on Tuesdays. So, like, we'll go talk with them in the afternoon. My plan, though, I'm not wearing it right now, but my plan, though, is to go in dressed up as Clark Kent. So, I got a nice Superman shirt, and then I've got, a button down, nice slacks and everything. And I'm just going to kind of walk in, and people are going to be like, why y'all dressed up? And I'm like, because it's Halloween. So,
Ooh, that's
something
good.
real simple, something, nothing too crazy. But those are my plans. I don't know. What are you? You got anything fun planned?
I don't have anything fun necessarily planned. The wife right now, she's dressed up as Flo from Progressive, so I'm like supposed to be Jamie from Progressive, so we're supposed to match with the Progressive outfits. So that'll be fun tonight as we after player availability tonight. So I don't know if I'm going to wear it into the player availability. It's not as incognito, I should say, as what you got going on. I don't. If I go in a white apron with Progressive across, someone might say, are you supposed to be here? So it'll be interesting.
It
It'll
might
be
raise a few
fun.
questions. I don't know. It could be an easy icebreaker, man. It might be worth
It
it.
could be. I might get the first question of the day, if I do that. So we'll see. We'll see. But hey, this matchup, man, it's always fun. Obviously, a lot of LSU fans and Alabama fans, know what happened last year. I mean, Brian Kelly, his first year at LSU, just a wild win for one side, a heartbreaking defeat on the other side. But Cody, I mean, one of the biggest storylines, and I know LSU fans have paid attention to this, is Alabama's offense. And so just want to kind of get your thoughts because from the fans' perspective, there's a lot of, well, their offense isn't as good. Well, their offense was otherworldly the past couple of years. But, this season, it does feel like they have continued to grow and mature. And when I went back and looked at some of, week 1, week 2, week 3, Jalen Milroe compared to the past couple weeks, this kid's grown up a lot. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this Alabama offense and how they've trended over the past month or so.
Yeah, they improvement's a pretty good word. This is the first time since 2016 probably that Alabama didn't have a future NFL quarterback at quarterback, right? They went from
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones in that 2020 year to Bryce Young the last couple years. And now you've got Jalen Milroe, who is very good. Jury's still out if he's going to maybe make the jump to the next level. But this is a guy that came into this season. He only had, so many snaps under his belt. He only started one game last season when Bryce was out with a shoulder injury. So like a lot of unknown, and just like, when you're playing in the SEC and really college football in general, you just don't know how it's going to go. Right. And so a lot of unknown. I think a lot of us were kind of, okay, we're not sure where the ceiling's going to be, because we all know how important the quarterback position has become to the game, over the last few years. But there were a lot of really good pieces around Milroe. I think the offensive line we thought in the preseason would be very, very good. Turns out that they're not. We'll get to that in a minute. But like a lot of really good skill guys, right? Like the two leading receivers, Ja'Cory Brooks and Jermaine Burton, both back this year. You bring in Tommy Rees at offensive coordinator. So that, immediately is like, okay, they're going to start implementing some tight end usage. A lot of young skill guys who do really well, getting the ball in space. So, a lot of things may be working in Jalen Milroe's favor. And it probably took him a little while to really, him and Alabama both, to try and, figure out like, hey, where am I good? Where am I comfortable? What do I do best, right, in over the course of the game? And so, we've seen Alabama start to lean in a little bit more to that, right? Like Jalen Milroe, he's got a strong arm. He's not afraid to throw the deep ball. He's also mobile. He's not a run first guy, but he can run. He's very fast. Usually if he escapes the pocket, he's still looking to pass first. But he's had a couple of runs of, more than a couple of runs of 20 plus yards this season. Like he's pretty quick footed, which is interesting because earlier this week, he actually told us, like, I don't practice running at all. Usually in the off season, I'm just throwing. And it's like, you watch him run and it's like, dude, like lean into this a little bit. Like it could be good for you.
Yeah.
So like there's, over the last month, I think we've started to see Alabama's offense maybe get to, its final version, quote unquote. I think for a lot of this season, it's been kind of a home run or strikeout offense. It's been very, they either get the big play or they kind of slog and struggle along. There were, mentioned Milroe's deep ball, but like we see it in the passing game, we see it in the run game as well. Like this is on pace to be one of, Nick Saban's worst rushing offenses since he's been at Alabama.
Wow.
And yet I think they're only second to LSU in the SEC when it comes to runs of 10 plus yards. Like it's either they're going to get it or they're not.
Yeah.
They're really good at the deep ball. Occasionally, Milroe will go through spurts where, he's just, a half inch off here, a half inch off there. The timing might be off. He might misread something. And then he'll go on stretches where he hits 8 of 9, 10 of 12, he'll hit the deep shots. And I think it was during the Arkansas game, they played a wonderful second quarter. Milroe went like 8 of 11 for 200 yards. They were running the ball well. And then, the rest of that game, he missed like 7 straight incompletions. They weren't running the ball effectively. Like, I think 8 of their carries went for 140 yards. So the other 30 went for 70. Like it just wasn't very hot and cold, very hot and cold. And so you wonder what, they did during the bye week to maybe iron some of that stuff out, especially like you mentioned, right? We're entering that last month of the season. This is a big game to kind of kick off, where either of these teams going to go. And so when it comes to Alabama's offense, like, can they iron out some of those deals? Can they be a little bit more consistent? Can they be a little bit more efficient? That's ultimately, I think, what we're looking for. Because then you look at, LSU on the other side of the ball, they're going to have to be efficient and they're going to have to be consistent if they, I don't know that they want to get into a track meet, but they're going to have to score more points than they have, over the last few SEC matchups. So it's still very much a work in progress. And you hope that Alabama solved a lot of maybe some of the smaller issues over the course of the bye week.
We could talk about the offensive line. I think that's really been a big story. I mean, there's talent there, Cody. I mean, it's not that there's not talent. Is it a question of just execution? Is it a question of things are maybe a little too complicated? Have they had to simplify things? I know LSU's had to do that at certain spots for their team this year. What has it been that has just kind of led this offensive line to not be as good as maybe the preseason expectations were?
Yeah, I think a combination of things, right? So coming into this season, I hand in the air. I bought the hype. They were talking about wanting to make people quit. They were talking about
Yeah.
being bullies. They wanted to go back to, kind of that throwback joyless murder ball type offense. I bought it. I was like, yeah, like kind of like you said, there's talent on this offensive line. There's 4 and 5 star guys up and down. JC Latham at right tackle is going to play on Sundays for a long time. Tyler Booker at left guard is going to be, he's tremendous, absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
And then, Caden Proctor, the 5-star left tackle, like I've been watching that kid since he was in high school. Again, your listeners don't care, but I came down here from Iowa and that's where he's from.
Yeah.
So like, I've just been watching him for a long time and I'm like, yeah, like this kid's got the stuff. He's really good. Then you kind of take a step back and you take the bird's eye view of the thing. And it's like, okay, they got to replace 3 starters from last year. Offensive line very much relies on cohesion, consistency. Like those guys communicate quite a bit during the course of the game. And, if it's not put together well enough, things can go haywire very, very quickly. So you combine the inexperience of them just playing together with, a true freshman who's trying to, Caden Proctor, again, true freshman trying to play at that SEC speed right away. It was a pretty rough mix the first, few weeks of the season. Texas really beat them up, in week 2. Like that's ultimately how Texas, I think, won that game. Like they won the trenches. Like that's, and the result was 10 points, against South Florida, who, that's a team that just all they do is blitz. Like they just found the weak spot, which at that point was Caden Proctor still, and they just blitzed him relentlessly. I want to say he was responsible for giving up 3 sacks that day. As the season's gone along, they've been a little bit more cohesive. They've been a little bit more confident, but still you look at the numbers and it's like, okay, Alabama has still given up 31 sacks over the course of the season, which is just atrocious. Not all of that, I don't think, is on the offensive line. I think a lot of that is also on Jalen Milroe. That's a guy that sometimes, when the pocket gets squeezed a little bit, he'll panic. He'll leave clean pockets before maybe he should. He'll roll one way or the other, and occasionally, especially the last few weeks, A&M, Arkansas, and Tennessee specifically, and I'm sure LSU will do this too. They've done a really good job of using, a speedy linebacker or, a defensive back to spy him, right? And so
Yeah.
it takes a lot of speed to get a guy like that on the ground. So, they'll use him to spy so that he doesn't get out, to go run. And that's really kind of limited his running ability. But it's also, on the occasion, like he steps into sacks sometimes. And so like, that's just, pocket awareness, quarterback that needs to grow a little bit more. So yeah, it's been a weird, first month of the season, it was like, man, this offensive line is just, they're not good. They're not playing well. They're not playing together. And then the second month of the season, it's like, all right, like Milroe's got to finish. He's got to fine tune a couple of things. He's got to have a little bit better pocket awareness. How has Alabama helped him? A lot of tight end usage. You guys will see on Saturday, a lot of tight ends will line up next to Caden Proctor at left tackle. They'll have, running backs go and chip help. Right after the snap, they'll keep running backs back in for, pass protection as well. So they're doing little things here and there to help the offense, and clearly it's working. They're taking steps forward, but, at this point, a little bit more of an unfortunate feature than a bug. So safe to say Milroe will probably give up a few sacks, or the offensive line will give up a few sacks. LSU is going to get in the backfield. Just a matter of how much and how often. And if they can do it enough, that's going to cause problems for Alabama's offense.
Yeah, that's something that I think when you say that, LSU fans are going to be excited because they have probably the speediest of linebackers, Harold Perkins. That's who they're thinking of when they think of that guy that can spy. So that'll be a very interesting matchup. One more thing I wanted to hit on that offense before we move over to the other side of the football was, coming into the season, I think a lot of people from the outside, maybe not on the Alabama beat, said, who's going to step up at wide receiver? Like they've had such a nice run of NFL talent receivers. Who's stepping up? And it seems like, Cody, just from the outside looking in, when Jermaine Burton has a good day, Alabama's offense has a really good day. So, talk to me about the emotional roller coaster that is Jermaine Burton. He's a fun guy to watch, but he's obviously, I think he fits the mold when you think of receivers. But also, what does it take to get him going? Is this something we're going to see Milroe try to establish early on in this game on Saturday to try to get the juices flowing for both of these guys?
Yeah, he's a fiery receiver. He talks a lot of trash on the field. That sometimes that costs him a flag. But no, he's the engine for a lot of that deep ball offense. And if Alabama's hitting deep balls early in the game, it's going to really open up, I think everything else for the offense that they want to do. Burton, he was one of the leading receivers last year. He came back this year specifically to fine tune some stuff, to also maybe help Alabama's, they went from Bryce Young to Jalen Milroe, right? You need some veteran, leadership at receiver to maybe help with that transition a little bit. It took a while for him to get going. He was dealing with, small injuries here and there, but it was really the A&M game where he took off, 9 catches, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, just all around a career day. And since then, he's been steadily consistent. At 2 catches, 60 yards against Arkansas, 4 catches, 62 yards against Tennessee, had another touchdown in that game. He's a guy that he tracks a deep ball really, really well, which is great because Milroe is very accurate on a lot of his deep balls, or at least he puts it in position for only his receivers to make plays. So for a while, it kind of took, a combination of injuries and just, I think Alabama was really kind of shuffling through some of their receiving personnel. I mentioned Tommy Rees coming over from Notre Dame as new offensive coordinator. He loves using his tight ends. So, naturally, a lot more 12 personnel means fewer snaps, fewer opportunities for a lot of Alabama's receivers. They got a lot of receivers who I think can do some good things, but it's just kind of, I think they spent the first month or month and a half of the season trying to figure out, all right, who are our alphas going to be? Who are the guys we need to feed? Who are the guys that we're going to get on the field more often than not? Jermaine Burton has obviously, I think, emerged as that alpha. Isaiah Bond is another guy who he's a deep threat. He's very, very fast. He's also, he's able to go up and get contested catches. They've got some other guys that do really well in space. Mentioned Ja'Cory Brooks. He's a guy that dealing with injuries, also kind of in the doghouse a little bit to begin the season. So haven't seen a ton of him yet, but there's also Kobe Prentice has been really good. Kendrick Law is finally healthy. That's a guy that they just get him in space, get him the ball, 5-10 touches a game. And then I think really, Jermaine Burton has kind of been the alpha receiver, but I think maybe the biggest emergence when it comes to the passing game this season has been Amari Niblack. He's a tight end. But he's kind of a bigger body. Like he's a bigger body receiver that just tight end by, label only, I guess is the best way to describe it. This is a guy that's averaging north of 20 yards a catch. They line him up in line. They line him up in the slot. They line him up out wide. They were talking in the preseason about how this guy is just an absolute mismatch when it comes to opposing defenses, because do you put a fast linebacker on him? Do you put a safety on him? Do you try and stick a corner on him? Like he'll post up smaller DBs and he will just outrun, larger DBs or linebackers. He's been very, very good this year. They've used him a lot. So there's a lot of different receiving options. I think they have finally settled into, Burton, Bond, and then Nyblack is kind of their three primary receiving targets. Which, I think that's only going to help Jalen Milroe more going forward, because it's like, okay, like we're not shuffling through 6, 7, 8, 9 receivers or pass catching options. These are your primary guys. We'll, throw Kendrick Law in there every now and again. We'll throw Kobe Prentice in there every now and again, handful of snaps. But yeah, watching the pass catchers kind of come along. They're not a Julio Jones. There's not a Calvin Ridley in that room this year, but there are a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things. And I think they have finally settled on personnel that they at least want to give the most opportunities to moving forward.
Yeah, and Cody, one of the biggest questions that I think could determine this ball game, and we're going to talk about the other side of the football for both teams, where it's probably the strengths of both teams. This one to me is who has the bigger weakness. We know what LSU has coming into this football game. The fact that there's going to be potentially 4, guys that are either redshirt freshmen or true freshmen having to cover a lot of these guys and going up against this, deep passing attack and an offense that's continuously, like you said, trying to find themselves. So before we move on, do you kind of feel the same way? I mean, that's where I sit is whichever is the biggest weakness on Saturday, that's going to come back to haunt the team. Is it LSU's defense against Alabama's offense? Because the other side of the football, it feels like that's strength on strength, and that's going to be a fun one to watch.
No, I think there's something to that. I think, this is Alabama's offense has to take advantage of kind of what's in front of them now. There's still a lot of talent on that LSU defense. You mentioned Harold Perkins. That's a guy that Milroe needs to identify where that guy is before every single play, no matter what. That said, injuries in the secondary, that's going to leave open an opportunity, I think, for Alabama to maybe throw the ball around the yard a little bit, at least early. I know that they want to be a run first unit, but just the inconsistency there, has kind of, hey, let's put the ball in Milroe's hands and let's see if he can make a play. More often than not, he does come through with good plays, has a few boneheaded mistakes every now and again, but no, I think there's something to the idea of, which weakness can step up more. But then at the same time, like, we'll get into this too. LSU's offense has been humming in such a way that it may not matter how good Alabama's offense is or, how many stops LSU's defense makes, because, I read a stat too, and this is kind of getting a little bit off topic. LSU has punted 15 times this year. Total.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're aggressive on 4th down, but like the offense is just that good. Right. And so it's like, again, Alabama doesn't want to get into a track meet with LSU, but like there's something to the idea of like, look, like, can Alabama's offense be better than LSU's defense enough to help Alabama's defense in this game? And if they do that, I think that they'll give themselves a shot.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And yeah, Jay Bramblett, the LSU punter, we've had him twice during media availability this week, and he's like, or during the season, during the week, and he's just kind of joked. He goes, "Yeah, I didn't really have to drink any Gatorade. I didn't have to have any Powerade or anything after the game. Like he just kind of got to hang out. So it's a nice life for a punter. I guess not if you want to like put up good numbers for the NFL. You don't want to be in this LSU offense right now, but it is what it is. But man, we take a look at this side of the football, and look, we can talk about factors. I can sit here and tell you about Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., this running game that has really been a big missing piece outside of Jaden Daniels that has just emerged in Logan Diggs and company. I think it just comes down to how do you feel like Alabama matches up schematically with what LSU does? Because there's been a lot of talk in our press box, in Tiger Stadium, and talking with some other folks of saying, I don't really know how you match up with all these weapons. What do you think the plan is for Alabama's defense, which is a fantastic unit, by the way?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to like about this matchup, right? A lot of NFL talent on the field, lots of, all SEC talent on the field. Alabama's got here's where I fall on this. It is like the best in the country in LSU's offense against a lot of aspects about Alabama's defense that is also some of the best in the country, right? You start with the pass rush. That's where you start with all of Alabama's defenses. Dallas Turner's one of the best in the country. Chris Braswell is a dude that's just he's one of those. There's a saying that we have here, like you just need one good year in Alabama's defense, and that'll catapult you into the league. Chris Braswell is kind of being that guy this year. He's got a knack for the big play. He has been just as efficient and just as productive as a pass rusher as Dallas Turner, but Dallas Turner is the guy that gets all the sacks, and so he's on the NFL draft boards and whatnot. Chris Braswell is kind of quietly sneaking his way up there. But then on top of that, you have a very, very good secondary behind that pass rush. You've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, right? Like he's going to be, him and Dallas Turner could potentially be two of the first defensive players off the board in the NFL draft. You got Terrion Arnold on the other side, who is emerging into another all SEC caliber defensive back. You've got Caleb Downs, superstar true freshman. Literally at this time last year, he was playing Georgia high school ball. He has seamlessly fit into this defense and is not just playing, but like playing very, very well. So, does the pass rush get there because they're very good, or does the secondary cover enough for the pass rush to get there, or does the secondary not have to cover enough? That's so. The pass rush, the secondary is gonna, it's going to be a fun little back and forth. Like there's going to be some haymakers thrown, I believe, in this matchup, because you look at, LSU's pass catchers, and there's so many of them. They're so good. The play calling, the way that they're able to get these guys in space, the pre-snap motion, they're able to kind of get some matchups, not quite Steve Sarkisian-esque, but similar, right? Some motion-based matchups when they're able to kind of see the personnel a little bit. That'll be interesting to watch, because that was something that Alabama struggled with in week 2, right? Like Sark just called one heck of a game, and fourth quarter, Texas pulled away from, what was otherwise kind of a defensive rock fight for the most part. And that's a credit to Alabama's defense. So, but then to me, this all starts with, can Alabama, I don't know that they can stop him, but can they slow down Jaden Daniels? That to me is like, that's the primary key. That's the first order of business every single play, because this is a guy he's accurate. He throws a great ball at all levels of the field. But if he gets out of the pocket, you are doomed, right? Like that is, he can get out and run. He can, like, obviously he would prefer to sit in the pocket and throw the ball around the yard, but like he has no problem escaping the pocket and running 15, 20 yards downfield. So, the challenge, I don't know, man, there's so many different challenges. I don't know if there's like one big one, but I think the first order of business for Alabama is just, stopping Jaden Daniels. And I don't even know if stopping him is the right answer. It's like, can you slow him down? Can you frustrate him? Can you get him out of a rhythm? If you can do that, you'll give yourself a chance to get off the field. And the longer that LSU's offense is off the field, obviously the better are the odds for Alabama.
I mean, Cody, I know teams evolve over the course of a season. This is not the same LSU team that suited up week 1 down in Orlando against Florida State. But I think if there is a blueprint for what Alabama wants to look at, Jaden Daniels had tendencies last year that he has been able to kind of negate coming into this year. One read, feels the pressure and goes and takes off. Now, the kid has great legs, but we've seen this year he's been able to stay more comfortable, allow himself to be better outside the pocket as well. But you go back to that Florida State game, it was guys like Jared Verse, Braden Fisk up front for that, Florida State defensive line. That's probably the best group they've faced all year to really make him uncomfortable and revert back to some of those tendencies. Coming into this game with, watching some of what Alabama can do, the potential, I think, is there for Alabama to have that type of effect on him. Now, 7-8 weeks into the season, does he still play the same way? I think that's going to be a really big storyline to watch. Is Daniel's really grown up? And, a lot of fans down here in Baton Rouge say, this is also one of those games where I think a guy that deserves to be in New York could solidify his status in New York with a good performance in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. But man, it's these games. It's my first one. I know it's your first one. What are you excited just to experience and give maybe the LSU fans that are attending? What do you think the atmosphere is going to be like on Saturday night?
Oh man, this atmosphere is going to be bonkers, right? Like it's a 7 p.m. kick, but also like College Game Day is going to be in town in Tuscaloosa. So like those people are going to be up and they're going to start drinking real early in the morning, right? So like it's, marathon, not a sprint. I'm sure LSU fans are going to they're going to be fine. Like they're going to come in, they're going to hold their own. But no, man, like it's going to be so much fun. Like Bryant-Denny Stadium at night it's a different monster. Like it's a lot more fun under the lights, like, and especially just the fact that, these two teams have gone back and forth so often over the years. There's always so much talent between these two teams. And then this year is literally no exception. And then you add in the fact that Alabama's only got 1 loss. LSU might have 2. So they probably need a lot to go right to get back into the college football playoff picture, but a trip to Atlanta for the second straight year for these Tigers still very much on the table if they can get the win, right? And also, I don't think they would mind playing spoiler to Alabama's season, right? So,
No.
you combine all those factors in. I know LSU is going to travel well. They always travel well. Alabama shows out, especially when Nick Saban asked them to. Saban was very, very before the Tennessee game, which was the game before the bye, like, hey, the crowd needs to show up. The crowd needs to get loud. And they were, and it was unlike anything I had seen thus far this season. So much that Saban spent, after he did the CBS hit post game, he wandered around the stadium and waved to the student section. He waved to all the fans while chewing on his cigar, because that's what you do when you beat Tennessee. And, he made it a point to say it again in his post-game press conference. And so it wouldn't shock me at all if he asked for that again. And it wouldn't shock me at all if Alabama fans oblige. But I know LSU fans are going to come out in droves. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere. It's going to be an amazing game. And I can't wait to see how it unfolds. This is going to be college football at its best, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is one of the things that makes this sport so special, and what a lot of us feel like is one of the best sports, if not the best sport in the world. Before we get you out of here, I know you mentioned a lot of names. Can you give me one name defensively and one name offensively that LSU fans should keep an eye on that's going to be obviously roaming on the field for Alabama?
Yeah, I think offensively, I touched on him before, but Amari Niblack, this is a dude. He can be a difference maker, and this is a guy that has a nose for the ball. He embraces contact. He's the tight end, right? And this is a guy that they're going to use every which direction. They'll line him up in line. He'll do some chip help stuff. He's a pretty good blocker. But when he gets the ball in his hands, he's dynamic, right? He is a guy that can catch the ball over the middle of the field and continue running after the catch. This is a guy that runs routes well enough to go down deep. When he's on the field, LSU needs to, alert. This is a guy that you need to pay attention to. He's a threat to get the ball whenever he's on the field. Just very, very talented playmaker with a nose for the end zone and a nose for big plays. Defensively, I think I mentioned him too, but Chris Braswell, he is the second half of Alabama's tremendous pass rush. You start with Dallas Turner, right? But Chris Braswell has been just as good, just as productive. He had 2 sacks against Tennessee and against Joe Milton. That's no easy task. But this guy also has a knack for big plays. Against Mississippi State, he had a pick 6. Against Texas A&M, he blocked a field goal that, if not for an errant penalty, he would have also returned that for a touchdown. Against Tennessee, he sacked Joe Milton, forced a fumble that, Alabama's defense ultimately scooped and scored, and that iced that game. This is a guy that tends to come up big in big moments. And in a game like this between Alabama and LSU, I feel like there's going to be a lot of big moments. Wouldn't surprise me at all if Braswell came up big with another big play, especially when Alabama needs it. So, yeah, those are the 2 guys that I think I would go with. Amari Niblack, tight end, and then Chris Braswell, edge rusher.
Great weekend of college football coming up, especially on CBS. You got Georgia, Missouri, that 3:30 Eastern kickoff, and then Alabama, LSU, the nightcap. Cody, appreciate you, man, hopping on the podcast and previewing all things Alabama, LSU. Before we get you out of here, last thing, let the fans know if they want to read maybe the Alabama perspective, or they want to jump in some of the conversation with you guys, where can they find your work and everything that you guys got going on?
Yeah, man, we're just you guys are Go 247. We are Bama 247. So still in the 247 network. If you guys have a Go 247 subscription, you can get access to Bama 247. So we've got, our boards all lit up for this week. We've got stories coming out every single day, and we have our own podcast, Roll Pod. So that's, if you guys want to tap into that, we're going to be talking plenty of Alabama, LSU later this week. But then also on socials, we're at Bama_247. I'm at Cody Goodwin on Twitter. So it's going to be a fun week, man. I'm excited. And I've been, like I told you, probably last week, I've been digging into this game since the bye week started. It's going to be a fun one, man. It's going to be a big one. I can't wait.
Yeah, every time I think I have my prediction, I uncover a new stat or a new trend that is I don't know how I feel about it. So I'm waiting to hold my prediction till Friday. But Cody, appreciate you as always, man. And LSU fans, make sure you go check out everything over there at Bama 247. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7.